Writers, Cami Osman here with the Narrative Project. I am so excited to spend a little bit of time with you this morning talking about the number one thing that stops writers from getting their work done, and that is the inner critic. So let me just start by talking about the definition of an inner critic, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the types of the inner critics that impact writers. And then I'm going to send you over to my website. So if you're interested, you can sign up for a 6-week deep dive that we have where I work with writers, creatives, really of any kind, actually anybody who has anything who that they're trying to do but they're getting stopped in doing. And so the 6-week deep dive just moves people through the inner critic and into work with their inner champion. So let's get started. I just spent the most amazing weekend. I mean, and I really mean that, the most beautiful, amazing weekend with a group of writers in our 9-month Get Your Book Done program. And we spent an entire morning talking about the inner voices that sabotage us when we sit down to do our writing. And actually, these are the same voices that sabotage us when we're trying to do anything, you know, get to the gym, get out for the run, clean our house, I don't know, anything really that we're trying to improve in our lives, you know, cook more healthy food, all kinds of things that we set our minds to. Often these are the things that we set as resolutions at the beginning of the year, and then we don't complete them. So I want to just share with you what we talked about over the weekend and give you a sense of how you might, give you 1 or 2 tips about how you might begin to work with your inner critic. So if you're here and you're live, just say hello, put a little note down below or over there, wherever the stream of comments shows up for you. Okay, great. So, by the way, I just want to say, if you have watched me live before and you see that things are bare in the background, that is because I am slowly but surely packing up all the stuff in my apartment to move into my own home. So, twinkle fingers for me. It's very, very exciting. So bear with the kind of blank wall in the background. All right, so let's get to it. What is an inner critic exactly? The inner critic is basically a term that we use in pop psychology to talk about all of the voices or all of the messages or beliefs or inner energies that stop us from doing what it is that we intend to do. And they say all kinds of things to us. They're not always critical. So I like to think of them as the inner saboteur, that which sabotages us from the inside. And of course, we know that there are things that sabotage us from the outside, but often even a big storm on the outside, not always, but often a big storm on the outside needs to correlate with some inner voice that says, don't push through this, don't get creative and find another way to get this done. So I like to just think of these as sabotaging voices, okay? And they can talk to us about anything. Like, so they can say, you know, you suck at this, you might as well not bother, you're getting started too late on this creative journey, you've had these extra 50 pounds for years, you'll never get rid of them, you've tried everything. So they can be critical, discouraging, upsetting. Hi, Erin, good to see you again. They can be, Erin's one of our 9-month participants in the 9-month program, and so he was with us this weekend as we talked about the 7 different kinds of inner critics. So these voices basically can give us messages that we're insufficient in some way, but they can also give us distracting messages. The sabotaging voices could say, it's much, much more important for you to do your laundry than it is for you to sit down and do your creative work. Or you have those emails to answer, you have to get those done before you can go out for your run. And then the day trickles on and you don't get it done. The voices can also weigh one good thing against another good thing, okay? So for example, a lot of writers that I've worked with, in fact, a lot of people I work with even in therapy, have this thing where they think, excuse me, if I do spend time on this thing over here that matters to me, you know, join a club to work out, or spend extra time in the kitchen cooking healthy food, or sit down to do my writing, then that will actually take away time from other important things like my children, or like the work that I need to do for my boss. Follow me? So the internal sabotaging voices are not always criticizing us. They're not always saying things like, you're stupid. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they just steer us away from our intent, from our resolution, okay? So here we are, a little beyond half the year, and we're not even up to the New Year's resolutions yet. But I'm here to tell you that you don't need to make resolutions. What you need to do in order to really move forward into the thing that you're passionate about, to get your writing done or get to the gym on time, whatever it is, what you need to do is to change your relationship with the inner critic. Okay, so let me just give you a couple of the 7 inner critics. Let's talk about 2 of them. Okay, 2 of them. The first one is the perfectionist. Okay, so the perfectionist is the voice inside your head. And the reason I bring this one up is because it is the one we typically think of as the inner critic. It's the voice inside your head that says essentially, this isn't good enough. It has to be better. It has to be perfect. There's no point in doing this if you're going to do a shit job. It's the one that says, when you make a batch of cookies and it doesn't turn out right, you throw it away rather than just put it on the table and say like, it happened. So this is a voice that will often stop us, if not from writing, it will stop you from showing your writing to anyone. So, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat because I was talking a lot this weekend leading the retreat, so bear with me. So that inner critic is a kind of a common one that really stumps people up. And if you know me, you know that I have a favorite quote by G.K. Chesterton, which goes, anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Now, if you're cringing as you hear that, you probably have a perfectionist voice inside of you. And let me explain what I mean by that. What I really mean is that anything that brings you joy should be done regardless whether or not, you should participate in it regardless of whether or not you're going to do a brilliant job. The joy that it brings you is in and of itself what you can get from doing that particular activity. So I salsa dance, I sing karaoke, I do neither of those things very well, and let me assure you that as a writer, my first draft is as shitty as the shittiest first draft you've ever written. In the revisions, that's where I move toward excellence, but never perfection. So I work with deadlines, and when I get to that deadline, every piece that I want to put out into the world, I've done it just as well as I can up to that deadline. The reason that I can do this is because I've worked with the perfectionist inside of me so that I am able to actually accomplish the things that are meaningful to me. As a marathon runner, I have been last, and I'm still going to do another one. So I'm going to share with you how I got to the point where my inner perfectionist, which used to be really, really loud, is much quieter now and much calmer, so that I am one of the most getting it donest people that most of my friends know. And it's not because I do everything perfectly, though some things I do with excellence. A lot of other things I just do because they need to be done. So I'm going to share with you how I worked with that inner critic in a minute. The second inner critic that I want to share with you about, or inner saboteur, is the molder. This is the people pleaser. So I'm sharing with you the 2 today. There are 7, and we're going to talk about all 7 in the 6-week deep dive that's coming up starting on September 15th. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, go over to my site. I'm not sure where the link is. Go over to my site and click on the 6-week deep dives and click on the inner critic, and you'll see a description of it there. So we're going to talk about all 7 in that course and how to activate the inner champion. And we're going to go into some really wonderful in-depth exercises so that you can work on your own with the inner saboteurs around whatever is going on in your life. And you can keep doing that after the 6-week deep dive for the rest of your life. Because don't you know, there's always going to be some reason not to do what you're passionate about. Okay, so the second inner critic that I want to talk about, second saboteur, is the molder. And the molder is essentially a people pleaser. So how do these parts get started? Let me pause and tell you a little bit about how they get started, and then I'll go back to the specific way that the molder functions. So, and the reason is because I have a personal story around this. So the way that the inner critic gets started inside of us is that we are born with our little core self intact. You know, I'm not saying we're blank slates. Anybody who has children know that they often just pop out with personalities. So that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that we come out with unsullied and undamaged psyches. And so, you know, given kind of a really amazing, nurturing environment where when you cry, your caregiver holds you and says, "It's okay, boo-boo, it's gonna be okay." And when you laugh, they smile with you and say, "Oh, that was funny, isn't it?" In other words, tons of real empathy and mirroring. And you're sort of given that unconditionally all the way through, along with good boundaries, along with good socialization, but without shame. Anybody like that out there? Not so much. If you're raised in that sort of environment, then you would walk away probably with very few inner saboteurs, because you would never have been in danger or felt unsafe on the outside. So you never would have needed to develop a way of handling danger. But what happens instead for all of us, seriously, all of us. So if you're a parent, this came up in our retreat, and so I just want to say it really loud and clear. Like, there is no way to be a perfect parent. If you are a parent who put your best effort in and really cares about your kids, yeah, they're probably still going to get hurt throughout their childhood, but they're also going to be okay. They're going to know that you are a loving parent. Okay. Parenthetically, also, parenting is not the only influence in how people turn out. So I'm not trying to create here a perfect cause and effect. I just want to share with you how the saboteurs get started, okay? So please, if you are a parent and guilt is starting to bubble up in you, rest assured that guilt is one of the inner saboteurs. So when you learn how to work with the saboteurs, you're going to learn how to change your relationship with guilt. So God bless you, parents who are out there and doing your best. It is a very, very hard journey. So the way that, let me backtrack. The way that the inner critic gets started is that something happens. It can just be a tired parent kind of shouting at a child, or it can be going to school and another kid picks on you, or if you were raised in a family where the family itself was dangerous, then you learn early, this is danger zone, like I have to protect myself. So what happens is that a portion of the psyche splits off and becomes a part that manages the safety factors. So in the case of perfectionism, that part would learn that making mistakes is not safe. So we're not going to make mistakes, and that part is going to kick into gear and manage the hell out of you, tell you that mistakes are not okay, you might as well not even try, you shouldn't even put this effort forward because you're going to screw it up anyway. That voice is going to try and keep you invisible or perfect, right? So there's like only 2 options. That manager part is trying to make sure that you don't ever put yourself out there because being seen is dangerous. So wherever you learned that, that heart believes with its whole heart that being seen is dangerous. So in the case of the molder, okay, getting back to that, which was one of my really big inner saboteurs, I learned very early on in my family of origin, because it was an unsafe environment in many ways, I learned that if my parent, my primary caregiver, was unhappy, if she was sad, discouraged, angry, upset in any way, then my environment was not safe. She was a screamer, a yeller, she'd swing her arms, you know, all that stuff that makes a child feel unsafe. So I learned that the best way to stay safe was to make her happy. So what do I need to do? I need to watch her eyes, her face, very, very carefully for any hint of displeasure, and become as charming and delightful and helpful and kind and warm and caregiving of her as I possibly could. If I could please her, if I could make sure that she felt better, my chances of staying safe, not getting yelled at, you know, not getting sent to my room, not getting hit, frankly, would be better. So of course, as I grew up, and that was a pretty brilliant strategy, to be really honest, that part of me that broke off and said that was right. Like, it did keep me safe. It also garnered a lot of support and attention from teachers, and other kids liked me. As a people pleaser, I collected people who liked me. And in fact, I was voted friendliest and funniest smile in high school, not surprisingly. However, unfortunately, if you live your life to please other people, you won't be true to yourself time and time again. There will be times when you would like to say, no, I don't want to do that. Or times when somebody has an opinion that you disagree with and it's important. Might be around social justice. Somebody makes a racist joke and I want to stand up against it. You know, all kinds of, or I want to write something that might not please someone. So I can't do that if my inner critic is really, really active, if that molder part is leading the way. And don't you know, these parts stay the age at which they developed in you. So my little pleaser molder part was developed at, I don't know, 3, 4 years old, if not earlier. And so it's got this sort of energy of a very young child, right? Like, what do you want? What do you need? What do you want? So over the years, it became crucial. Like, I can't run a business. I can't support and help my my employees, my contract employees, my coaches. I can't make decisions that other people won't like, you know, because if I do, somebody might be unhappy with me. You would be paralyzed living in a life like that. Trust me, because I was paralyzed. I was not able to speak up for myself in many ways for years. And as add the perfectionist part in, those two parts, you know, man, I would have to do something perfect that pleased someone. I'm just saying, I was exhausted. This is what motivated me originally to find a way to work with these parts. I know their intent is good, right? But they're really paralyzing me, and I'm not able to live my most expanded, exciting life because I can't take risks. And when you take a risk, you don't know how it's going to go. You feel me on that? Like, you want to be able to take risks and to fail at them, because that way you don't, you know, and to not be afraid of failing, because that way you can just jump in and like completely embrace life. If you're feeling me on this, go over and make a comment. I'm not really sure where the comments are. Go over and make a comment. What's resonating with you here? Is the perfectionist big in your life? Is the molder big in your life, right? What is it saying to you, and what is it stopping you from doing? If you didn't have to do it perfectly, if you didn't have to please people, what would you write? What would you say out loud? What chance, what risk would you take? Would you start a business? Would you go skydiving? Actually, that one you kind of want to do perfectly. Would you go on a trip, a backpacking trip? You know, what kind of mistakes would you, yeah, people pleaser Sean saying, yeah, absolutely, because sometimes you just want to look at someone and say, actually, I disagree with you, right? And if you feel that you have to please people, it's really, really hard to do that. Like that part will stand between you and the person that you're talking to, arms raised in the air, going like, don't do it, don't do it. And you won't be able to speak up for yourself. So it leads to a lot of self-abandonment. Okay, so I promised you that I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to work with these inner critics. If you want to engage with us a little more around this, and I can walk you through the exercises slowly, please just go over and check out our course at thenarrativeproject.net, and there is a link at the setup for this video. So don't hesitate to jump over there and take a look. And you can email me or text me or PM me with any messages that you have directly. No problem with that. So one of the ways that we normally work with our inner critics is that we beat the hell out of them, right? So I people please again, and I still do it sometimes, so much less, and I recover from it so much more quickly than I did even 5 years ago, and certainly more than 15 years ago. Granted, some of that is just like age and growing up and knowing that collecting data that the world is safer than I thought it was, okay? But if you're not looking for that data, you will collect the data that the world is unsafe, because it's both, right? And so one of the things that we need to do in order to work with these inner saboteurs is that we need to shift our relationship with them, which means that we need to be in a relationship with them that allows that change to happen. And if your relationship with the inner critic is antagonism, if I people please and then I go home and I'm like, God, why did I do that again? I'm so stupid. And I think to that voice, why are you always talking to me? I hate you. Then what we're doing is we're not only sending one arrow into our heart, which is to mold ourselves to someone else's needs. You know, that's already a self-abandonment. But now, having self-abandoned, now we're going to beat ourselves up. So it's like cruelty upon cruelty to the self, right? And while a lot of people believe that inner criticism and meanness is motivating, and it may be, in the case of the perfectionist, that voice, you have to do this perfectly, it may drive you toward excellence sometimes. The anxiety and the pain, the agony of managing life that way will eventually make you crash. So I'm a big advocate of self-compassion. Okay, well, how do we do that? You've probably heard that a million times, right? But how the hell do I turn toward myself and be kind when I have just yet, once again, done something that I'm trying not to do and hurting myself? So let me just give you this little tip, okay? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to notice where in your body you feel that anxiety of needing to people please, for example, okay? So for me, it comes up in my chest area, which is why when I talk, you might often see me put my hand on my chest. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've learned that I want to soothe that people pleaser, right? Or the perfectionist. The perfectionist sometimes kind of lands right back here, but also here on the chest. So you want to notice where that part activates your body. When you're inclined to people please, when you're standing in front of someone and you see that displeasure on their face, you don't make the phone call because you're afraid you'll upset somebody, whatever. So notice where it lands in your body. Then what you want to do is you want to try and get a visual of the part. So in other words, most of the time we act like these parts are blended with us, like it's just me. It's just me. I'm a people pleaser. It's just me. That's how I am. Or I'm just a perfectionist. And I'm here to tell you that's not actually the case. The case is that there is a part of you managing your life, and that part is a perfectionist. And it's managing you into safety and away from danger. That's its intent. Its strategies may be damaging, but its intent is to protect you from harm, okay? So what we want to do is we want to unblend and get a visual of the part. How old is it? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it have a gender, right? And especially with the age, you want to try and get a visual of that part at the age that it says it is, okay? Now, the best way to do this is really just to close your eyes and to try and connect with the part as a separate part, and ask it the question. So, how old are you, sweetheart? And let your intuition lead the way here. You know, don't try to figure out like, oh, I think I was about 6 when that crazy thing happened, so it must be about 6. And the reason that I think it's so important to let the intuition lead the way is because sometimes the part will say, I'm ancient. And when the part says I'm ancient, very likely what's going on is that rather than it being a part that broke away from you, you were born into it, baby. Like your mother had that thing going on and she just projected it onto you. You know, like I was on an airplane once where this mom and this kid who was kicking me was sitting behind me. And as we were getting ready to land and the plane was going down, she turned to her little boy and she goes, sweetheart, I think you should put your earphones on because otherwise when we land, you're going to freak out. You're going to be so scared that, you know, it's just going to be awful. So you should put your earphones on. And I thought to myself, that kid's fear part, that he's going to live with it his whole life, but it's hers, right? She's the one who's projecting fear onto him. Maybe he wouldn't be scared if she weren't so scared that he would be scared. So maybe he would, I don't know. She might have had a lot of experience with it. So I would turn around and say, hey lady, what do you think? You could stop projecting on your kid. But, you know, what I want to say by that is really basically just that sometimes a part says it's ancient and it really is something that was gifted to you. You know, like my fear of managing money did not come from my lack of, from some kind of mistake that I made or from some terrible wound per se around money. It came from my parental identification with my parent. So just believe the part when it says how old it is, okay? And then basically, again, in the 6-week deep dive, I'm going to walk you guys through this in meditation and in writing, and so way slowed down so that you have plenty of time. Here, I'm just going to share with you how to do it so you can work with a part if it's really up for you and you're not getting your writing done. So once you have a sense of how old it is, if it has a shape or a color, does it have a name? Does it call itself anxiety? Does it call itself perfectionism? Does it call itself Dolores? You know, sometimes parts, weirdly enough, have actual human names. So, and once you know the name of it, then ask, is it willing to talk with you so you can get to know it? So we're approaching the part not with the intent of pushing it down. Our first intent is curiosity. So again, remember, this is just the first step in working with the inner critic. It's to get a visual of it and then to approach it and ask if it will talk to you. And then the next step is to ask it, what is your job in my life? Okay, what is your job in my life? The whole point of this conversation, internal conversation, is to get to understand why this part is doing what it's doing so that you can have compassion on the part and understand that it's not just trying to ruin your life. It's trying to protect you. But from what and why? What is its full motivation? So after you've had this conversation, and there are other questions that we can ask the inner critics. Remember, it could be 1 of 7 that you're working with. Work with 1 at a time. Then in the course, we're going to slow that down and ask further questions about its fears for what would happen if it didn't do its job. We're going to find out if it might be ready to change jobs or get a promotion in the internal system. We're going to do some other work, okay? But for this first conversation, just give the part a chance to share with you why it's working so hard. What is its job in your life, okay? And after you've done that, and then you're probably going to want to journal about it, then you want to thank the part for talking with you and let it know that you're going to be back, okay? That your intent is to change your relationship with it, not to make it do anything. Because we don't want to put these, remember, these are defensive parts, man. They're already defensive. They're just like looking for an opportunity to get activated. So we don't want to activate them. So thank it for talking with you and let it know that you're going to be changing the acrimonious relationship that you have with it so you can bring its defensiveness down. So if this sounds complicated, it really isn't. It's really about as simple as all of the conversations you have in your head all the time anyway. It's just bringing a little consciousness and intention to the process. So if you're interested in learning more about this, I would love to have you post questions down below or over there. Go over to thenarrativeproject.net, take a look at our 6-week deep dive, what we're going to be covering. Certainly PM me if you have questions, or send me a text or an email if you have that contact information. If you don't, by all means, personal message me and I will contact you, either ask for your email and have a direct email conversation, or we can hop on the phone if you have questions. I really just am super passionate that we all develop deeper self-compassion, because it's my belief that changes the freaking world. We've got a bunch of defensive people out in the world walking around with their inner 3-year-old perfectionist, or or their mold, or maybe any one of the other 7, some of which are more aggressive than others. We've got young defensive parts interacting with each other. So I'm super invested in you bringing the anxiety of your inner critics down and changing your relationship with them. So when you and I meet on the street, like, we're core to core, you know what I mean? Like, we're bringing, I'm there in my core centered self, and all my inner anxiety is lowered, and I'm not feeling dangerous, standing core to core with you, man, and you're not either. We have an amazing interaction with each other. That's intimacy, right? Versus my anxiety part and your anxiety part having this dance, then we're defensive with each other. Man, that shit just makes violence happen in the world, and I'm so tired of that. That's one of the reasons that I'm bringing this up now. But another reason is that in our writing, we approach our writing core to core. Like, we can get honest, right, in our writing. If we can soothe these inner saboteurs, well, and we can get it done, frankly. But in the writing itself, we can get honest, because the danger that vibrates around us, can I say this, should I say this, is lower, and we're safe with the page. Man, there's nothing safer than the page, I'm not talking about publication. Oh, there's a whole different set of parts that'll come up around that. But I'm just talking about the page. And my friends, I want you to be safe with your page. So please PM me, write messages down below, ask me questions. Let's connect around this core to core. Lots of love. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.